Si us sembla, comencem amb aquest debats d'educació, que és l'últim, el darrer d'aquest any 2009. Veig forces cares conegudes d'aquest fòrum de debat permanent que anem tenint al llarg de l'any. Tot i així, per aquells que avui assistiu al primer debats d'educació, doncs sapigueu que Debats d'Educació és una iniciativa de la Universitat Oberta de Catalunya i de la Fundació Jaume Bofill, doncs precisament per això, per promoure el debat sobre temes d'actualitat i temes de fons relacionats amb l'educació i amb els temes que ens semblen reptes claus per a la nostra societat des d'aquesta perspectiva del món de l'educació. És veritat que Debats d'Educació té aquesta vocació de parlar de l'educació, però de com l'educació afecta la societat i des d'una perspectiva de l'educació entesa com a bé comú i molt àmplia. Per això hem tingut debats que no han estat estrictament centrats en temes de centre educatiu o de sistema educatiu. Però el debats d'educació d'avui, amb el que es clou aquest cicle de l'any 2009, sí que tracta un tema ben bé centrat en el món del sistema educatiu i del centre educatiu, un tema que és a més d'actualitat en el nostre país, en el moment de l'aplicació de la llei d'educació, i amb aquest suggerent títol de responsabilitat, autonomia i avaluació per la millora dels centres educatius, hem convidat i estem molt agraïts de la seva assistència avui i que estigui aquí amb nosaltres, el professor Ekholm, que ens donarà a conèixer una realitat diferent, una realitat a la qual moltes vegades ens referim. Els que hi éreu en l'últim Debats d'Educació, amb el professor Duprié, vam acabar parlant de l'autonomia de centres i vam acabar fins i tot fent referència al model suec. Doncs avui tindrem l'ocasió de conèixer-ho millor, d'enriquir-nos amb la seva aportació, amb la seva experiència. En Debats d'Educació sempre convidem a gent tant del país i d'aquí com de l'estranger, però que per la seva experiència, pel seu coneixement, pel seu currículum, ens poden enriquir i aportar moltíssim per pensar i poder replantejar també el que aquí estem fent des d'una altra mirada i des d'una altra actualitat. Per tant, penso que abordem un tema de futur, un tema de present, un tema clau, un tema que ens afecta i que afecta fonamentalment al nostre sistema educatiu i a la vida dels centres i a la comunitat educativa en general. Sense més, li passo la paraula al Josep Maria Mominó, de la Universitat Oberta de Catalunya, que ens farà una presentació més extensa i més com cal del professor Ekholm.
Molt bé, gràcies, Anna. Sí, efectivament, avui mantenint aquest propòsit de nodrir els debats amb l'expertesa que podem obtenir del context internacional i per fer atenció a aquesta relació crítica entre autonomia, responsabilitat, avaluació, millora dels centres educatius, contem amb la presència privilegiada, diria jo, que ens proporciona en Ekholm, professor d'Educació de la Universitat de Karlstad i també de la Universitat de Gothenburg. Professor Ekholm acumula una llarga trajectòria en la investigació sobre el desenvolupament social i organització escolar que s'ha traduït en un nombre important de publicacions científiques en aquest àmbit. Ha estat director de l'Escola Nacional per al Lideratge en Educació i del Comitè Nacional d'Educació a Estocolm, director general de l'Agència Nacional d'Educació i per la Millora Escolar a Suècia i més recentment també director general del Ministeri d'Educació del govern suec. El professor Ekholm ha col·laborat així mateix en consells de ministres com a assessor en educació de diferents països, especialment en països nòrdics, i també amb d'altres organismes com el Consell d'Europa, la UNESCO i especialment amb la OCDE, on ha participat activament en la direcció estratègica del Comitè d'Educació d'aquest organisme. Davant els reptes que té plantejats el nostre sistema educatiu, tal com deia ara mateix l'Anna, especialment en la conjuntura actual en relació a la promoció de l'autonomia dels centres i també a la seva avaluació efectiva, ens sembla especialment rellevant l'aportació que ens pot fer el nostre ponent. Així doncs, professor Ekholm, responsabilitat, autonomia i avaluació per la millora dels nostres centres educatius.
Okay. I will do my best in Swinglish. That is something between Swedish and English. By that I mean I actually think in Swedish while I am speaking English. And as you will see, I will take you on a little trip up to the north, where we have made some experiences during the years in the same direction as you have ambitions to go. So I will tell you something about the history of my country and especially the history of education in my country, and to discuss some, let's say, strategic moves that we made during the years. But I will start by saying something about a basic problem in educational systems. You know, when we started to create schools, it's a long time ago, and you started much earlier down in the Mediterranean than we did up in the north. So about 2,000, 2,500 years, we started to do this thing, or we invented this peculiar idea that we could send over culture by talking to people. And we talked, and we talked, and we talked. And we thought that the talk was taught, that we were teaching. So we created two roles, one for the talker, and we call that teacher in English. In my language, it's called something else. In yours, professor. And we were going on with this for hundreds of years, which was effective. We gave a role to the person who was a learner to listen carefully. Sometimes we even thought that people learn good by listening so carefully so that they could repeat exactly what the talker had said. We have finished to think in that way. And we made some changes over the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years when we had this invention of schools going on in our countries. When we reach around 500 years ago, we put forward an idea that was started to get practiced only 100 years ago, that a school is not actually a place where you educate. A school could be a place where you learn. And that is a sort of interesting revolution that happened in the creation of schools, that we were placing the student in the center of things instead of the teachers, that the teaching is not the most important activity that is going on in a school, but learning. And when you start to do a sort of Copernican revolution in your head and see that actually the old invention of a school where someone was telling and telling and telling and telling and telling, and you chose another role of the one who was earlier the listener to become a person who was asking questions instead of answering questions, who was talking instead of listening, who was creating knowledge instead of getting served with knowledge, then you have another school. When we start to practice this idea on schools, and we start in Europe, we tried to do it in the 1700s, in the 1800s, and in my country we start to really practice it in the end of the 1800s. The Americans made it then. Some French, some Germans. But usually that idea was a very isolated, small part of the educational system. In Sweden, we had a debate on the role of the teacher about 100 years ago, when we said to each other that let's go for this more interesting idea to make a school a place for learning instead of a place for teaching. And then we started to rebuild our old school system. We have made it in several steps. we said to ourselves when we had created a school for everyone, we started to work on the concept of creating a school where everyone was meant a learner. But we didn't start that, well, actually we started that project, you could say, in 1919, around 90 years ago. And our politicians at that time said to themselves and to others, to the public, that let's change the basis of our school. Let's start to create a school where you go for learning and not so much for teaching. In the beginning of the 1920s, in the 1930s, when you were having war with yourself, we were a peaceful country. We haven't been at war for 200 years. So we have almost forgotten how to go to war. But in this peaceful time, we reshaped our national educational system to become a system where you started to work more and more with creating a school where the learning activity was in center. There was a lot of resistance against it, especially from teachers. Teachers were fostered to teach, to talk, to show, and they were asked in the 20s and 30s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, to change their main idea of what they were doing in school. We wanted them to be supporters to learners, to become helpers of learners, but also to become challengers to the learners. Because we need to put demands on the learning part of the students in the school. We wanted to create a school where action of the students, where question of themselves, that they combined with actions, showed them what to learn. And we are still working on this project, I have to say. We only have struggled for 90 years, and we are not there yet. So it takes some time to change school systems, and especially to change the mentality of people working in schools, and also changing the ideas of parents who sends their children to school. But I will tell you about what we were doing, because during 1900s, we took a big step when we changed our school system in the 1950s. After the Second World War, we said to each other that we need to create a school system where people go to school and train not to be obedient. We need to train people to be disobedient in our school system. We want to foster people to be parts of our democracy. We need to have students who are not listening too much to authorities, but think themselves. And we also said to ourselves after the Second World War that we want to create a school where people go together from all social classes, and we sent out our old elite system where we had streaming going on, where we wanted to pick out an elite of people. When they were 10 years old, we wanted them to go to different parts of the school system. And we said, we will close this down. And then we used a strategy to change our school system in the 50s, where the state said to our communes, as I call them in Swedish, our municipalities. At that time we were around 2,000 municipalities in Sweden, and we were asked as municipalities to make experiments with a new school system, where we wanted everyone to go together for 9 years. In Sweden we are slow beginners. We don't send our children to school until they are 7 years old. And then we made experiments during the 50s with different solutions on how to keep everyone in the same school and to create a learning for them that really gave them everything that we dreamt of. Today, 60 years later, you could say, we have made our choices. The first choice we made in 1962 when we created what we call our grundskola, our ground school. And our ground school is a school that comes in when you are 7 years old, where 100% of our young people participate, where you go, whatever you are, how talented you are or how non-talented you are, you go together. We have a small portion of students who have real difficulties to learn. Children with Down syndrome, for instance, we sign them in what we call the special school, where we have about 1% of a year group. But they go together with the others in the comprehensive school that we have created, in the ground school. Before that, in Sweden, students or children go to preschool. You usually start when you are around 1 year, 1.5 years old. And at that time, about 40% of us go to preschool, where we participate until we are 5 years old. And then we go over to what we call a preschool class. About 90% of those who are 5 years old go to preschool. The others don't go to the preschool because it's usually too far away from their home. Because we live in a country which is big on the surface, which means that there are few people in Sweden. We are 23 people per square kilometer when we look at the whole surface. So we have a lot of fun with animals and with forests and other things. But when you are 6 years old, all of us go to preschool class, which is a political compromise, where we couldn't make up our minds 20 years ago if we were going to start with our grundskola when we are 6 years old, or if we could finish the preschool when we are 6 years old. So we created a mishmash. And we still have it, and it will stay for a while. When we have gone through the grundskola, where all of us join together, and we go there for 9 years, then 95% of a year group continue into what we call gymnasieschool, where you have 16 different national programs. 4 of them is preparing you for going to the university exclusively. The others are more or less directed into vocational life, but they are also preparing you to go to the university, because we have that ambition that actually no one can escape from having a possibility to go to the university. So when we look at the effectivity of that form of school today, we see that about 65% of a year group is prepared to go to the university when they are 19 years old. About 50% of them go to the university. When we have done this, you could say that our way on the road to create a school system with a high degree of comprehensivity is, well, to be very comprehensive for the students. We try to go together. In the grundskool, where we go together for 9 years, well, children really try to stay. If the parents don't move around, they stay in the same class with the same classmates for 9 years. And it works, and I will show you how it works a little bit later. The system is decided on by, you could say, 4 big actors. We have the parliament. The parliamentary system is having elections every 4th year. Then we make an election of a new government. And in Sweden, during the last 60 years, the Social Democrats have been in government for 45 years. So they have dominated the scene, so to say. And then when you look at the little state of Sweden, we are a little bit bigger than Catalonia. So we have 9 million inhabitants. And I think that you have 7. So we are about your size. But in that size, we have 290 communes. And that is, a commune is a small district with its own parliament, its own little communal government, where we have autonomy for the commune, which I will come back to, and especially within education. Within the commune, you have several schools, as I call them, educative centers in your language, and they have a sort of autonomy too, and I will quickly explain in what degree. Because the Parliament takes decisions about the overall structure. For instance, the structure of the preschool class, the grundskole, the gymnasium school, and the university. That is a decision taking in Parliament. In the Parliament, you also take the laws that regulates the goals, the overall aims of the school system. The government has as its task to decide on details on the aims and to formulate it and give a lot of tasks to its authorities. We have a Swedish tradition where you keep small ministries of education, and then we have several agencies, state agencies. I was, for instance, for a while the Director General of the State Agency for Education, where we were responsible for developing syllabus for the subjects in the schools. And I was also responsible for making national evaluations of our system and creating our participation in international comparisons and several other tasks. But the government have the power to decide on their own agencies. Within the commune is getting a lump sum of money to deal with its taken from the taxpayers' money, and then the commune have to take its own decisions on what are we using this money for. And within the education, the commune decides on the money, how much money are we going to give to the schools that we are responsible for in this community. The schools have the responsibility to decide about details about where are the money going. So it's a lot of money running around. And the money, well, we spend a lot of money on education. If you take the costs that we spend on one of the students in the grundskola, we have Swedish kronor, but if I translate it into euro, each year we pay about 8,000 euros per place. If you look at the money that we spend for the preschool places, it's more. We spend about 11,000 euros per preschool place. So we care for the small children and wants to have them together with a lot of grown-up people, with adult people, with teachers. The schools are responsible for producing results, to get things into the heads of the students, or to get the students to learn. So that's what the main idea. When we look at our system, you could also say that in the commune, there are some, let's say, key happenings that goes on in the commune and in the schools. The commune is responsible for the appointment of teachers. It is the commune who pays the salary for the teachers and for the school leaders, the directors of the school. We call them rector. And the local board of education in the commune is the one who appoints a director. The one who appoints the teachers is usually the local director of the school, who is also responsible together with the unions to find an individual salary for each teacher. So we have left the collective tariff for teachers on salaries. We have individual salaries for teachers. And the school director, or the rector when I think Swedish, is responsible for really making a difference between the teachers, which puts demands on the rector or the director to be well informed about what the teachers do and what results they reach. Not only what the results the students reach, but also what the teachers reach. The decision on how much money we use on education is, of course, taken by the parliament, and the government is making proposals, and then the money is spread out to the communes. Within the communes, we also have discussions and have decisions to be taken about what school is going to get the most money, where do we have the most severe problems, where do we have most immigrants, for instance? Don't we need to give more money there? Where do we have the lowest tradition of going to a school? We have to spend more money to help the teachers to reach better results in these areas. So that is a decision taken in the commune and where the schools have to act on it. We, if I make it rather simple, you could say that our politicians have, since the 1920s, said to our school teachers and school leaders that we want you to help the students to develop in such a way that when they leave school, when they are 16 years old or 19 years old, we want them to know how to think. And we have, of course, as you have, a lot of school subjects in which we want students to think. We want them to think history. We want them to think chemistry, as you are. But we also want students to know how to feel. So we have written into our national curriculum about emotions. We want students to develop ways to express things, not only with their spoken language, with their written language, with their bodies. We want them to dance in a most passionate Swedish way. And we want them to express themselves in more than one language. We haven't chosen Catalan. We have chosen English as the first foreign language, so we start with that when we are 7 years old. So usually you meet people who can speak English in Sweden nowadays. And we then, when we are 12 years old, we make a selection of a new language, and you could say that not Catalan, but Spanish is chosen by a third of a year group as their second language. Then we choose French, or German, or Russian, and some few try to find a Chinese teacher, but it's not very easy in Sweden. And we use language then, so we have said to ourselves that people need to know how to express themselves in different languages. We want students to create, but also to produce. We are actually having a subject that we call handicraft, or slöjd in Swedish, where we are working in woods, and we are working in textiles during school hours to show people that it is important to produce. We also want people to learn how to decide, and this have we been doing since the 1920s. In the 1990s, we invented a new goal. We have said to each other that even if people learn a lot at school, they will never stop learning. So we saw the terrible effect of computers, for instance. When you live together with computers, you need to learn and relearn and relearn because some peculiar people change the software all the time, as you have seen. So even if you call yourself an adult, and 100 years ago an adult could be a well-educated and a person who have finished their education. We say to our school children, you will never finish. Give up that hope. You have to learn how to learn. So we nowadays train each other to learn how you learn. We also, if I make it very brief, say to each other that you need to be in specific ways. And we have said to each other since the last Second World War that you really need to be trained to be an independent person who is able to cooperate on an honest base. Not totally honest, but yeah, we say that we need to be brutal honest with ourselves. Don't lie to yourself. And that is what we try to help young people to develop during school years. And we want them to develop awareness and responsibility. This to be able to participate as adult people in an independent but cooperative and responsible and aware, conscious way in the democracy. And what we also have said to each other in our national curriculum is that we really want all young people to dare to use what they know and how they are acting. When we have chosen this, and as I said, our national curriculum is actually going back to the 1920s. It was changed in the late 50s, and we have been working with different versions of it since the early 60s. But we have also tried to measure, are we reaching these aims? And to show you a small example, you could look at this one. Here I have an item from a national evaluation where we in 1992 and 95 and 2003 put a lot of questions to students where we created scales, for instance, to measure in what way their independence was developing during the school years. Here you have a question that says, that we present to the students, that your teacher tells you to find out in what way a product is made. You are asked to read about it in the library. On your way to the library, you realize that one of your neighbors know a lot about this production. It would be quicker and a more easy way to phone him. How would you do? And when we asked the students that one, we gave them, as this was given to 12,000 students in different ages, but I will show you the results from a specific commune to show you what happens during years in Swedish schools. We gave them 3 alternatives to be able to do this in a quick way. Here you have the response alternatives. One would be to be a very obedient boy or girl. I do as the teacher says. I go to the library and I read about it in a book. The second alternative you see as not that obedient. That means that you go back and stay as an obedient person and ask the teacher if I can use the idea that I have. So you ask for permission of being independent, which is not exactly what we mean with independent. And the third is an alternative that is the most independent one. Well, if you have an own idea, follow that one, and then see what the teacher says. And here you see what happened when in one of the communes they used this question from when the students were 10 years old, and that is called class 4 in this diagram, or årskurs 4 as it says in Swedish. And here you see what happens over the school years. So this is school year 4 when you are 10 years old, 5, 11, 6 when you are 12 years old, and the 12th year, then you are 18 years old. And here you see what happens with the first alternative, those who are obedient over the years. In this commune, the schools could say, hooray, we succeed to make them less obedient over the years. Here you have the students who say, I go back to the teacher. I ask for permission of following an idea of my own. And here you have the students who say, well, I take the risk. I make up my mind, I test my own idea, and let's see what the teacher says. And you could say in this commune they were not too happy with this picture. If they had been really happy, they had had a much steeper development of the yellow one to go up. So that is one way where we have tried to evaluate whatever goal, whatever aim we have formulated for our schools. We are keen on evaluating because we know that if we evaluate, we can have a civilized discussion about why things are going so well or why things are not going well, so that we can create a better school. And to give you some more insights in how we do evaluations, I brought with me what people have been doing in another commune where they wanted to see how variated is the school day for the students. They asked the students, 2 students of each of the classes in that commune, to make observations of what teachers and students were doing. So this is not a professionally made study, it is not researchers, but this is how we work, that we ask students to look at what we are doing. Actually, we train the students in the classes by looking at videos on how you can recognize different working patterns in the school. And then they use these working patterns and decided on what have we experienced for 15 minutes now. And then they made a mark on a marking sheet, and here you have how many percentage of these 15-minute periods that were used for in different ways during 2 school weeks. And as you see, the time that was creating the highest frequency is working alone for the 11 to 13 years old. And that is also the largest proportion of time. 58% of the time for the 14 to 16 years old was used for working alone, to do things on your own. And as you see, discussion was spent 40% of the time. And then you can understand that these young people, they couldn't make up their mind that a quarter of an hour was used for just one thing. They have said that it was used for more than one thing. Why do I show this for you? Well, the 17 to 19 years old, you see that listen to the teacher take a little bit more time for them, and they are spending more time at the computer. They are spending less time on making investigations, which was important for people in this commune to see that actually students in the lower grades were trained to make investigations. But when they reached the higher level of the school system, that talent or that capability was not used very much. So this is pictures that we take up in our schools about the working life there. And I also brought with me some of the routines that we have, because we try to put evaluation into the normal flow of the school year. So each year, the school is responsible for assessing its results and to find out and make up its mind about the quality of the inner work. So we try to relate the learning results of the students to what we have been doing during the years. And I just show you one example from one commune, how we try to catch what is done so that we can relate what is done to the results. Because if we can do so, the school have a possibility to improve itself. Each year in our state, the state asks the commune to make a quality review of the status of the schools in the commune. And the commune is asking the schools to make a quality review each year. The review that the commune is presenting is also presented at the web. The quality review that the commune is making, that is, so to say, a self-declaration of our results and our way of reaching these results, is sent in from the commune to the National Agency for Education, where the 290 pictures are put together so that we keep an ongoing diagnosis of the quality of the education in our little country. We have other evaluation normalities, as I call it in this PowerPoint picture. In Sweden, you don't mark the student when they are 6 years old or 7 years old. We wait until they are 12. Why? Well, we don't see any need for marking students. We can do other things, and I will come to them. Teachers are trusted, so teachers are producers of knowledge tests. They are testing the students in their own way during the whole duration of the school years, and they are the one who are trusted to mark the students. Each half year, the teacher, each student, and the parents, or the parent, if it might be one parent, of the students is coming together for what we call a development talk. That is a bilateral evaluation talk, you could say, where the student is sitting with all of the students in Swedish grundschools, for instance, have an individual learning plan. So they have it there, and they have a discussion with the parent and the teacher about, is this plan working? But they also spend time during this hour that it usually is spent on this development talk, talking about what about what you are doing as a teacher or the teachers are doing to me? How do I react on it? What type of critical remarks do I have, both positive and negative? And the parents have a say in this development talk. So it's a three-party meeting when you have that as a routine. And we have had that for now 20 years with the development talks. We, at the same time as the teachers are responsible for knowledge tests, we produce national tests, and they are nowadays compulsory in grade 3 and grade 5 in 2 subjects, in Swedish and mathematics, where teachers usually are using these compulsory national tests as a calibrating force when they are putting the marks later on in the school system. In grade 9, we have 3 national tests in Swedish, mathematics, and English. And in the gymnasium school, there are several subjects that have compulsory national tests to help the teachers to get a feeling of where is my students. It is not examination testing. It is a testing that is done in the middle of the school year to help the teacher to find a level of the markings. We also publish the aggregated results of the national tests for grade 9 students. It is published on the internet for each school, and we also publish the markings that is made of the students in grade 9. So that is a very open thing in Sweden, where you can go into the net and find statistics about each school and looking at it, and it is used in several ways. During the years, or in 1986 actually, we said to each other that we need to have a better grip more often of how our school system is working. So since then we actually said that we ought to have national evaluations every 3rd year. And we haven't had it because it was a little bit too tight. Because schools are slow working organizations. So when we see that results are not perfect, we need to make improvements, it takes longer than 3 years to make things better. But we started optimistically in 1989, 92, 95, 1996, it should be said. And then we waited for 5 years to 2003, and it will come up soon, a new national evaluations. We also use data from different international evaluations of the school system as components of our national evaluations. And we have participated very long in the interesting competitions that some international organizations are arranging for us as nations. It began with the IEA, where we started in 1964, and I made a very simple graph of how have Sweden succeeded in 40 years of participating in international measurement on education. And I made a simple marking here that if Sweden have come in the top class of the nations who participated, I give them a 2, and if they are a little bit above the average, it's a +1, average is 0, and then -1 and -2 is used when it really have been bad times. Here you have the results of how Sweden succeeded in the competitions or the comparisons of our literacy. And you see we participated in 1970 with 10 years old, but also with the 15 years old. The 10 years old in Sweden scored very well. We were among the top nations in that comparison, and we were in top in 1991, where also our 15-year-olds were scoring high. Then OECD have helped us to do this, and you see what have happened during the years. We have kept a high level of literacy. We understand what we read when we read it in Swedish. That is what this message says. The PISA studies and the IEA studies, when we participated in the first rounds of mathematical measurement, in the first mathematical, the FIMS, and the second one, which is called the SIMS, and then the third, which has been called the TIMS, and been repeated a 4th time as it's called TIMS again, we have scored in the following way. So you could say that we have seen that our school system didn't succeed very well in the 60s and the beginning of the 80s, we made something with it, and it started to work better. What we have been doing is that we have used this sort of evaluations both in the public debate about schools, so it appears always in the media. We take debates in the parliament, and it goes down to the local school. If we can trust the measurements, and we always have that discussion, can we really trust this measurement? It's too narrow. It doesn't cover the whole thing that we really want to cover. And then we say, but actually we don't have much better measurements. So we probably have to accept that they exist. Politicians at all levels use the results at the commune level as well as the national level. Teacher organizations sometimes want to get out of focus when we discuss how well we are doing, but they use it, especially when it comes to raising salaries, because one way to solve and create problems in a better way is to get better paid. School leaders and teachers use it for local improvement, and especially then when we have measured ourselves at the local level. Parents use it to some small extent.